Hey guys, and welcome back to The Wandering Wind. Today I want to talk about some of my favorite video games from some of the classic systems that I've owned over the years. Now, you may not know very much of my console history or even my handheld history. However, I have been privy to several different iterations of gaming consoles. One of my favorite and first video games that I ever really played was Mario Brothers on the original Nintendo Entertainment System. Now, this was back in the day and age where you could pick up an NES for 20-30 bucks from a yard sale, because back then electronic entertainment systems were not that popular. And in fact, I recall my mother telling me that the NES that they'd picked up had never been opened. It was just in the box. Someone had either gotten it for a gift or bought it but never opened it and used it, and it had just sat for a while, and then finally they got rid of it. But I remember playing through Mario Brothers, and back then I was a little 4-year-old, 5-year-old little kid with ADHD out the wazoo and all the energy in the world. I mean, I was completely and utterly addicted to the game, and I remember just loving it. I remember trying Duck Hunt, but I remember playing Mario Brothers, and that was really my first introduction to the world of video games. So that started me on a path that I am walking even to this day, pre-ordering Kingdom Hearts 3 and waiting for January 29th so I can play it. Damn it, I gotta wait 2 more months. But anyway, then in my older years, about 9 or 10 years old, I remember getting a PlayStation system, a Sony PlayStation 1, or just a PlayStation back then. And I remember 2 very distinct games that I played. One was Crash Bandicoot. I remember playing Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped, and I remember it being one of my favorite platformers on the system. I remember seeing so many people go, Crash isn't that great, and me going, no, I like it. But I also remember countless knockoff games, Power Rangers, just those really, really, really crappy games, like the Disney games on the PS1 back in the day, or even on the PS2. The stuff, the thing that was basically nothing more than a cash grab by whatever movie company or whatever wanted to make a bit of a headway in the gaming market. Those kind of games. But I also remember my first real RPG on console. Now, I remember before that having Pokemon, but we'll get there. But I remember very, very specifically having Final Fantasy VIII be my first entry into console RPGs. And I'm not kidding when I say that if it had not been for the Final Fantasy series, I probably would not have gotten into some of the RPG series that I'm into today. I seriously don't think that RPGs are made the way that I like them anymore. Not all of them, but there are some that are still really good. And for me, Final Fantasy VIII is probably my favorite, just because of the complexity and yet ease of picking it up. I mean, I was a 10-year-old kid playing Final Fantasy VIII and actually getting good at it. Get good, mate. I was actually getting good, and I was 10 years old. I mean, granted, I was a whiz kid at most video games when I really tried, but I mean, it never occurred to me that that was abnormal. And then we get into the handhelds. Now, I remember my first handheld device being one of those little, like one-off, not LCD screens, but just like those cheap knockoff games that you get at the dollar store or whatever. But I remember my first real handheld being the Game Boy. Not the classic Game Boy, but the Game Boy Color. Unfortunately, I never did own an actual classic Game Boy. I would have probably held on to that for dear life had I known what I know now about the collectability of such a system back then. But needless to say, I still wish I had my original Game Boy Color. It was the yellow edition. It had Pikachu. It had the Pokemon Pikachu edition with it. It was awesome. I remember playing that game for hours. I remember, like 2 years before I got the game, watching Pokemon religiously on Saturday mornings. Oh, right, you don't remember Saturday morning cartoons. They used to do that on Saturdays back then. They used to do that. Nowadays, you've got dedicated channels, and you're lucky if you get those halfway decent lineups. But then you've got, then I got my first real PC. And I remember my first PC game being, of all things, Doom. The classic Doom. I mean, I remember getting it on CD. Remember those things? No one uses those anymore. Everyone's moved on to MP3. But, I mean, it is convenient, but you lose some of the nostalgia with it. Oh, you have not heard music until you played a record, though, I tell you what. Anyway, back on track. I remember playing Doom on my crappy laptop computer from Dell that had maybe 2 cores and maybe a gig of memory, and I remember playing the shit out of that and just loving it. Windows 98, I mean, Windows 2000, maybe Windows XP on it, playing Doom, the classic Doom. I also remember playing Quake on N64 back in the day, which was kind of like a Doom clone. One of my favorite of all-time console games on PS2, though, because that was my main system for like 8 years. After I lost all the other consoles and had to save up to get another one, I got the PS2 and I started getting games for that. We used to have a shop in town called City Echoes where they would have retro games. We didn't go to GameStop for our games because we didn't have that yet. GameStop moved in and City Echoes went away, but it was great while it was still there. But I remember buying so many PS2 games from City Echoes. I remember playing stuff like Samurai Legend Musashi, the original Kingdom Hearts. Oh, Digimon. I remember playing a Digimon game on PS2, and I remember going, wow, they only now started making Digimon games? Little did I know that Digimon World 3 existed. If I'd have known that existed, I would have had that in a snap. I play that now on emulator, and I'm like, man, I wish I had this back then, because that would have helped me a heck of a lot with having something new to play. And something interesting, too, because, you know, depending on the way you play, you can have multiple different combat styles and everything else. It's awesome. It's just awesome. But, and then I remember being 14 or 15 and hearing about the PlayStation 3, how it's the next generation system. It's going to bring gaming into the HD world. Little did I know that PC gaming had done that a long time ago, but you know, um, PC gaming aside, I don't really care either way. I mean, PC gaming is PC gaming. It's going to be what it's going to be. Um, uh, I remember so many great memories of so many great games that I played over the years. What are some of your favorite games on your favorite systems from back in the day? I'd love to hear your comments down below. And until next time, I love you very much.